We don't often think about where the strange and quirky sayings that we say on a day-to-day basis come from. Things like spill the beans or breaking the ice are sayings that have interesting and strange origins that we don't think about. The human language is ever-changing. We have slang words, quotes, and sayings that develop over years and years and have multiple meanings. Most of these sayings end up fading into obscurity or becoming so cringeworthy that they fall out of common use. Some, though, have been a staple in our culture and language for centuries, and we still use them today. Today, we'll honor these famous phrases and sayings and get to know them a little better. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 quirky sayings and their unexpected historical backgrounds. 25. A stitch in time saves 9. There are many sayings and proverbs that fall under the umbrella of just being a simple incentive to not procrastinate. A stitch in time saves 9 is one such saying, but unlike others, it's a bit confusing in our modern society. The most concrete origin of the saying dates back to a book about proverbs by Thomas Fuller, but the book mostly just mentions it in passing along with other proverbs, meaning that it's likely that this saying has already been around long before it was in any sort of publication. Experts on proverbs and sayings say it's pretty obvious that the saying is referring to actually sewing, and that a stitch in time will literally save you 9 actual stitches later. It may not be so obvious to us, but, well, at least we now know. 24. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. We may not have always known what a gift horse is, or why we shouldn't look one in its mouth, but we get the idea of the saying. It means that you shouldn't take a gift for granted, or not appreciate it. This saying is over 1,500 years old, and apparently it originates from the idea that a horse's age can be determined by examining its teeth. One of the earliest examples of this term comes from St. Jerome's The Letter to the Ephesians, written in Latin in 400 CE. It states, "Noli equi dentes inspicere donati," which translates to, "Never inspect the teeth of a given horse." It'd be like getting a really old Superman comic as a gift and then looking up the resale value of it in front of the person who gave it to you. It's in bad taste. 23. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. A saying that essentially means that the person who makes the most noise and complains gets cared for more than those that don't. Now, this saying goes back to when cars were first being popularized in America. It was originally used because back then it was uncommon for a person to get their oil changed, get their car serviced, and generally just do basic maintenance unless the car was making some kind of noise. The saying was quickly adopted by American households and is still used despite its origin not making much sense anymore. I mean, I only get my car taken care of if there's a problem, but that's more out of laziness than not knowing any better. I do get it changed when the oil says to. Yeah. 22. Make hay while the sun shines. The saying that essentially means to make the most of your time and opportunities actually has an origin that originates in medieval times. The phrase originally appeared in a 1546 publication by John Haywood called A Dialogue Containing the Number and Effect of All the Proverbs in the English Tongue, which is really just a best title. It basically talked about the already established saying and what it meant at the time. It likely refers to medieval farmers and actually making hay. Farmers back then needed to make use of the warm sun because it could get ruined easily if it ever got too wet. 21. Barking up the wrong tree. A saying that is commonly used these days alongside bit off more than you can chew as a way to say you're taking on too much or picking the wrong fight, but it actually has a much more literal origin. It originated back when hunters would use packs of dogs to chase down smaller prey. Occasionally, that prey would be a raccoon that would trick the entire pack into thinking that it had gone up a tree. They would literally bark up the wrong tree. The phrase has come a long way since then, even though dogs will still commonly bark up the wrong tree when chasing a squirrel. 20. Don't buy a pig in a poke. Typically, we only hear the pig in a poke part of this saying these days, but the whole thing is, don't buy a pig in a poke. It's used to convey the idea that you should never make a purchase without inspecting the item you're buying. It makes sense, given the historical origin of the phrase. See, a bag or sack used to be referred to as a poke, and pigs were commonly sold in markets as livestock. That's to say that you shouldn't buy pigs in a bag in case there's something wrong with them. Always check. 19. The bee's knees. The bee's knees originates from back in the 1920s during a time when flappers would refer to anything acceptable as an animal part. Apparently, we have a cartoonist by the name of Tad Dorgan to thank. Tad is also responsible for terms like the cat's pajamas, and even possibly hot dog. He came up with plenty of sayings that didn't become famous, like the canary's tusks and the flea's eyebrows. Some people believe that the bee's knees is a shortening of the be-all end-all, while others believe it to be a play on words of the phrase the business. Either way, something cool is synonymous with the bee's knees. 18. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. The saying sounds like it's as old as the human language, but its origins actually only date back to the 1860s. The original phrase was, "Eat an apple on going to bed and you'll keep the doctor from earning his bread." It went through a few different iterations until it became the now commonly used "apple a day keeps the doctor away" in the 1920s. 17. Don't judge a book by its cover. The saying is so famous that we don't even have to think about its actual meaning to understand that it means that you shouldn't judge something based on looks alone. It's believed that the saying originated in an 1860 novel called The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot. It was then popularized further in a 1946 murder mystery by Lester Fuller and Edwin Rolfe, where it was quoted as, "You can never tell a book by its cover." 16. As I live and breathe. This saying is often used as a way of saying that you're sure of something, or occasionally used as an exclamation to say, "You can't believe it." The phrase has been used since the mid-1600s to emphasize the truth of a statement. It was used as early as 1756 in a play called The Apprentice. The quote in the play was originally, "As I live and breathe, we shall both be taken. For heaven's sake, let us make our escape." 15. Bless you. Bless you has been commonly used for centuries when someone sneezes, but it might surprise you to know that it was first used back during the breakout of the bubonic plague. While its origin is debated, the most common theory is that Pope Gregory I suggested that whenever someone may sneeze, you should do a small little prayer. Thus, it became common to say, "God bless you," when someone sneezed in the hopes that it would guard them from getting the plague and dying. While we no longer have the prayer aspect of it, we still very commonly say "bless you" to those that sneeze. 14. This ain't my first rodeo. This saying gained wider usage during the 1980s when it was used in the movie Mommy Dearest. It's typically used to convey the idea that one has more experience than the person they're talking to believes. It was later used in a song called "This Ain't My First Rodeo," written by Vern Gosdin. Vern said he originally heard the saying from a local carpenter rather than the movie where it was popularized. It's commonly believed that this saying was more of a local saying before it was popularized in Mommy Dearest. 13. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. There's research that states that this saying dates back to 1602, where it was used in an anonymous poem. It was also found in a publication called Characters in 1616. Back in that century, the actual phrase was, "Absence doth sharpen love, presence strengthens it." It's changed in wording over the centuries, but its meaning and use is a way to say that separation can make you fond of things and places you're used to seeing and taking for granted. 12. Turn a blind eye. The saying is typically used nowadays to refer to a refusal to acknowledge the truth in reality. Its origins actually have to do with a British naval hero by the name of Horatio Nelson. Nelson only had one good eye, and during a battle in 1801, his superior officer sent flag signals ordering him not to engage the enemy fleet. It's said that Nelson brought a spyglass up to his bad eye and proclaimed that he saw no signal, and signaled his ship to engage the enemy and scored a victory in the war. Some historians dispute this as a battlefield myth, but myth and truth often have similarities. 11. Read the Riot Act. While it's commonly used to scold children or as a way to threaten someone who's acting inappropriate, this saying actually does come from something called the Riot Act. The Riot Act was a document in 18th century England that stated that any group of people larger than 12 could potentially be a threat to the peace. They would read out the document to the group and demand that they disperse and go back to their homes. Anyone that was still there after 1 hour was to be arrested or removed by force. However, in 1819, a massive protest all ignored the Riot Act, which led to the cavalry attacking the civilians. This resulted in the now famous Peterloo Massacre. 10. Paint the town red. Painting the town red is often used to refer to a person or a group's night as a crazy night filled with adventure. It's theorized that this saying originates from one of two places. There are those that believe the phrase is simply a nod to red light districts, and that people would act as if the whole town were one. The other theorized origin stems from the late 1830s, when the Marquis of Waterford took a bunch of prankster friends around town and committed various acts of vandalism and destruction of public property, and literally painted doors, statues, and municipal buildings red. 9. Running amok. It's often used to refer to someone being disorderly and occasionally violent for no well-explained reason, but its origins can actually be traced in the history of medical manuals. Running amok was, and still is, a diagnosable medical condition to describe a person who suddenly goes berserk after being seemingly normal. The medical term actually comes from the study of the Umuko tribe, where tribesmen would randomly commit acts of violence and go on killing sprees. It was once thought to be the result of a demonic possession, but as the times modernized, the term was used in a medical sense to label the affliction. 8. Cat got your tongue. The phrase first appeared in print in a magazine. The quote comes from Bayou's Monthly, volume 53, and says, "Has the cat got your tongue, as the children say?" So, if the writers at Bayou Monthly are to be believed, the saying had been in use by children at the time. There are people who theorize that its origins date as far back as ancient Egypt, where cats were not only worshipped like gods, but were fed the tongues of people who had lied or blasphemed. If this is the case, then it was at one point a far more literal way to say that someone is quiet. 7. Break the ice. To break the ice is a phrase that's been used to describe overcoming social awkwardness and being the first to speak. While there are those who believe the term originates to a period where ice-breaking ships were common in exploration of polar regions, the first ever recorded instance of the phrase being used dates back to the 17th century, 1678 to be exact. It appeared in Samuel Butler's poem titled Hudibras, albeit with different phrasing. The orator, at last, broke silence and the ice. Ever since then, it's been used to encourage the socially awkward of us to be more direct and personable when meeting someone. Don't worry, if you ever meet me, I will break the ice. I am very sociable. 6. Bury the hatchet. Bury the hatchet is a common phrase used when talking about a truce or ending of a rivalry. Its origin can actually go back to America's history, when the chiefs of Native American tribes would signify the ending of conflict by throwing a hatchet to the ground at their feet. It actually comes from an old Iroquois legend that tells the tale of two leaders who convinced the 5 great Native American nations to stop fighting and form a confederacy. To celebrate the peace, they buried their weapons under the roots of a large white pine tree, and an underground river washed them away. 5. Rule of thumb. When we use the term rule of thumb, we're often using it to describe something that is a practical rule or tradition that people follow. Its origins are a lot more harrowing. Originally, it was believed to be a commonly practiced English law that stated it was okay to beat your wife so long as the stick was no bigger than your thumb. It was never an official law, but it was believed by many at the time that it was a common legal practice. 4. Spill the beans. Spilling the beans is a well-used phrase when we want to talk about someone revealing a secret or telling the truth about something, like the way I'm spilling the beans about all these phrases. While the origin of this one is debated, the most common theory dates back to ancient Greece, where they would do anonymous votes by using beans. They would use white beans for a positive vote, and a dark or a black bean for a negative vote. They would place the beans into a container, which would sometimes get knocked over, and then they say, "Spill the beans," as an exclamation. 3. Steal your thunder. We use the phrase steal your or my thunder when someone pulls attention away from you when the attention should be on you. It's kind of like when someone proposes at a wedding. It pulls the attention away from the bride and groom, or steals their thunder. These days, our use of the term is a lot more abstract than where it initially came from. Its origin is connected to theater, and a unique technique to produce thunder for theater invented by John Dennis in 1709. The play he designed the technique for flopped, and was then used in the theater's performance of Macbeth without his permission. The term "steal your thunder" was created shortly after, and the rest was history. 2. Show your true colors. It was a relatively common practice in the 1700s for naval ships to hide their nation's actual flag, or colors for those not accustomed to nautical lingo. After a ship would engage in combat with another ship, they would put up their real flag, and it would become known as showing their true colors. Our meaning of it these days still follows the base of the saying in that we use it to refer to someone revealing who they really are or no longer pretending to be nice around someone. 1. Hold a candle to. We use the term where we are comparing two people or things. The formula usually goes X can't hold a candle to Y. X in this case being something lesser than Y, and that's algebra. The original use of the phrase refers to when young apprentices would be expected to hold a candle for the mentor. It had several uses, including one from 1883 and then as far back as 1641. So, what's your favorite saying to use? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell, join our Discord, become a member, do all that fun stuff. Thank you guys so much. I love you, and as always, I'll see you next time.
Enjoying our lists? Be sure to click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Share them with your friends and help us consistently conciliate curiosity. And if you want even more lists, check out these videos here or just head to our website at list25.com.